Go away, you useless wife who can't even do chores. I sat on the floor, feeling small and insulted, while my mother-in-law stared at me angrily. We don't need you. You always look sad. You're just a burden. My sister-in-law, who never helps at home, said mean things. Wait a second, Morris. Your mom and sister are being too mean. I tried to say, but before I could finish, even my husband Mauricio looked disappointed in me. My mom and sister are right. I don't need a wife who can't do chores and work. I have a young girl who helps part-time and is much better. Pack your things and leave, Mauricio said firmly. All three of them kept saying hurtful things, calling me a bad wife. I clenched my fists, feeling angry. After using me all this time, how could they be so mean? Just you wait. I'll make sure you all get what's coming to you. But I looked at the three of them and said without changing my expression, fine, I'll leave. The family that's been putting everything on me will see what happens next. My name's Eleanor. I'm 32 and a working wife. Nowadays, many women work after getting married. And I've kept working at the same company I joined after finishing college because I enjoy it. One morning, while I was getting ready for work, Mauricio asked me, "Hey Eleanor, can you handle this? Tax season is coming," and he handed me a bunch of receipts and invoices. Again, "You should handle the shop's accounting." Mauricio avoided eye contact. "You know I'm better at it, so please." I married Mauricio 5 years ago. He used to work at a restaurant where I'd sometimes go. After a few dates, we decided to get married. Now, Mauricio has his own cafe, but he leaves all the boring tasks like buying things and accounting to me. As I headed out the door, my mother-in-law said, "Eleanor, I want Chinese food tonight. Can you get the ingredients?" "No, you can do it when you get back. Also, Vivian and the kids are coming this weekend. Make sure you cook something they'll like," I reluctantly replied before leaving the house. When we got married, I wanted to live just with Mauricio, but he said we should live with his mom because he was worried about her being alone. So we moved to his big family house. My mother-in-law isn't good at cleaning, and the place was a mess when we moved in. She gets money from her pension but spends most of it eating out because she doesn't like cooking. Mauricio always says that housework is a woman's job, so even though I work too, I have to do all the chores for everyone in the family. On top of that, my sister-in-law, Vivian, who moved out after getting married, often comes back home with her kids. When she's here, I have even more work to do. This morning, when I heard she's coming back this weekend, I thought, oh no, not again. And then the dreaded weekend comes. I'd love to relax on my days off from work, but instead, I have to take care of Vivian's kids and cook while rushing around. Vivian drops a big news on me. "Eleanor, by the way, I'm getting divorced and moving back here with the kids next month. Just so you know." "What? Are you serious? Got a problem with that?" No, that must be hard for you. When are you moving back?" "As soon as I can." My sister-in-law is coming home with her kids. At first, I'm surprised, but then I think it might be good because Vivian used to be a housewife, so she might help with the chores. That would make my life easier. Even though we're not very close, I hope for less work and go on with my days. But I quickly realized I was wrong. Vivian, just like her mom, doesn't do anything. She spends all day watching TV and eating snacks. She doesn't work or help around the house. Her laziness with chores was one of the reasons for her divorce. Now I have to do all the chores, even making meals for her fussy kids and getting them ready for school. As time goes on, my job gets busier with a new project needing more hours and early mornings. The house gets messier and messier. Coming home to a messy house is really disappointing, but everyone keeps asking, "When's dinner?" Or saying, "You're so slow." To make things worse, Vivian and my mother-in-law start making rude comments. "Eleanor, the laundry is piling up. Just because you work doesn't mean you can be lazy." But I'm busy too. When I try to explain, Vivian interrupts, talking back to your mother-in-law. "You're so brave, Eleanor, and you've been buying all the meals. That's not good for the kids. If you're home, can't you help a little?" "What are you saying? Mauricio owns a business. You don't have to work. You're just selfish. So be a perfect wife." I couldn't believe it, and they acted like it was normal. That night, I was so mad I could burst. So I talked to Mauricio. "I'm busy with work, and neither your mom nor your sister is helping with the chores. Are you saying bad things about my mom and sister Eleanor?" Mauricio looked at me angrily. I said surprised, "No, that's not it. But I can't do all the chores alone." Could you help me a bit? I'm busy with my business. You might not get it because you have an easy job in an office, but running a business is tough. And isn't housework a wife's job? Don't expect me to help. Are you serious? Mauricio just goes to sleep, leaving me upset. But then I get an idea. I think of something good. I quickly grab my phone and order some things online before going to bed. A few days later, a bunch of new gadgets arrive. A machine that washes and dries clothes, a robot that cleans, and kitchen tools that cook by themselves. If no one's going to help me, I'll use these gadgets to make my chores easier. While the delivery guys bring in the new washer, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law arrive. You bought a new washer without asking. The old one still works. But it's old, and this will make laundry faster and easier, I argue. What's all this? A cleaning robot and cooking gadgets. Eleanor, come here. They call me to the living room, where they're sitting on the sofa, and I'm told to sit on the floor. Mauricio is there too, sitting with his mom, looking pleased. What's happening? I asked. My mother-in-law yells. What do you mean? What's happening? You spent all this money on lazy gadgets with the household money. What were you thinking? I thought it would help with chores. It's not about helping. People these days rely too much on machines, my sister-in-law adds. Exactly, Eleanor. And those are fancy items. The ones we have still work. You're just wasting money because Mauricio owns a business. She stares at me, and Mauricio agrees. But you're just making things easier for yourself. Can't you even do chores properly? I wanted to reply, look who's talking, but I stayed quiet. Finally, my mother-in-law, maybe tired of my quietness, snaps. If you can't do chores properly, you should leave. I stare at her in surprise. She stares back at me. We don't need you. Mauricio and I can manage without you. You always seem tired and unhappy. You're just a burden, my sister-in-law says like she's had enough. Hold on, Mauricio. Your mom and sister are being too mean. When I look to Mauricio for support, he looks down at me and says, they're right. I don't need a wife who can't handle chores. I look at Mauricio in shock, but he just smirks. I'm a business owner and I can spend my money however I want. I don't need a wife who spends it to make her life easier. Why would you say that? And I've been getting along with a young part-time helper. She's pretty, unlike you. Pack your things and go. Shocked by Mauricio's words, all three start criticizing me, saying I'm a bad wife. I clench my fists in anger. After using me for so long, they say this to me. Just you wait, I'll make you sorry, but I stayed calm and said, okay, I'll go. Good will be better without you, my mother-in-law said meanly, and I quietly stood up and put something on the table. Mauricio, let's get divorced. It was a form for divorce that I had prepared earlier. Tired of everything. Okay, I'll sign it. But don't regret it later. Mauricio signed the papers, and I packed my bags and moved to a temporary apartment the same day. No one said goodbye to me. I handed in the divorce papers at City Hall and rented a new place. At the same time, I accepted a promotion at work that I had been turning down because of housework, and I became a department head. I was able to move forward in my career, which I had almost given up on, and I focused more and more on my job. Happy that nobody was there to hold me back, I felt relieved about a week after leaving. My ex-mother-in-law started calling, but I was busy and didn't want to talk to someone who had called me worthless. I kept ignoring her calls. A year later, on a day when I wasn't working, she called again. Thinking it was time to sort things out, I answered, hello? Ah, Eleanor, you finally picked up. Why did you ignore me for over a year? What do you want? Well, how are you? Are you okay? I replied honestly, I'm doing great. Working hard in my own place. I got a better job and more money. I'm living well. Really? Would you think about coming back? She sounded almost desperate, and I asked, surprised, why now? We're having problems. We're running out of money. I couldn't help but smile as I said, oh? Mauricio's cafe isn't even making $11,000 in profit. Huh. And neither you nor your daughter are working. So that makes sense. Eleanor, you knew? Yes, I knew. Mauricio's cafe was only making about $800 a month in profit. I handled the money, so of course I knew. Mauricio's cafe was only making about $800 a month in profit. I handled the money, so of course I knew. Mauricio acted like a big business owner but didn't manage things properly or take care of customers. So he probably didn't know. Of course I knew. I was the one doing all the money stuff and keeping track of what we had. What? Why didn't you tell us? I didn't know you were a big manager at a company and giving so much money for us to live. Yeah, I was giving over $3,000 every month. That's how we all managed. I was adding my money to help because I knew Mauricio's shop wasn't making much. Maybe Mauricio realized he couldn't handle things without my money after I left. Please, Eleanor, come back. Oh, by the way, what happened to Mauricio's shop? Ignoring my ex-mother-in-law's request, I asked, is Mauricio's shop closing next month? Even the part-time helper left him. It's not surprising with such bad management, he can't run a business. And he's too proud to do what he needs to do. No woman would want to be with a man like that. I laughed, and my ex-mother-in-law didn't know what to say. Can we finish? I'm busy, she quickly said. Also, the house has been a mess since you left. She said the house was a mess because no one was cleaning. The house was messy. Nobody was cooking, so they had to buy meals, and they couldn't even buy a new washing machine. It would have been nice if you left those machines, ex-mother-in-law says. What are you saying? Those lazy machines? And why can't I take what I paid for? I shouldn't have said that, but I never thought the house would get like this just because nobody was doing chores, I said, getting a bit annoyed. Isn't it strange that 3 grown-ups can't handle chores? What are your daughter and Mauricio doing? She whispered. Well, Mauricio is sitting at home all day, doing nothing since he found out his shop isn't making money. He said he could spend his money however he wanted because he's a business owner. And Vivian won't work, no matter what I say. She doesn't do chores. And she even asks me for money for herself and her kids. My pension is running out. Really? Your daughter told me she didn't need me because she had you, I said coldly. My ex-mother-in-law tried to be nice again. Please, Eleanor, my pension isn't enough for us anymore. I don't want to go back to that house. Your children are quite the freeloaders, aren't they? She didn't know what to say. As I was about to end the call, she kept talking. Eleanor will change. Please come back. Let's all be happy together again. Sure, be happy with a useless wife, I interrupted, and she struggled with her words but kept begging. I'm sorry for what I said. We're family. Help us. We can't even pay the taxes for the house. We'll have to sell it. I don't have to help you, and I don't want to. Figure it out yourselves. Goodbye from your useless wife. I hung up and blocked her number, ignoring her cries. Sipping my coffee in my tidy apartment, I chuckled. 3 months later, I happened to walk past Mauricio's cafe. It was closed. Even their house was sold. According to a neighbor I met, they sold the house and moved to a small apartment nearby. They caused trouble in the neighborhood, always fighting and making a mess. People complained a lot. They could have worked hard and taken care of their home. But they didn't, which wasn't surprising. I looked at their old house and walked away. Since then, I've focused on my work. Recently, a nice colleague told me he liked me, saying, I love how you work so hard. Let's date and maybe get married. I think my next marriage isn't far off, and this time, I'm excited to find happiness. Hey, why don't you come to Mom's funeral, sis? What? I never thought you were such a terrible person. I was caught off guard as my younger brother's words pierced through the phone line. His tearful voice held no hint of deceit. James, Mom passed away 5 years ago, you know. My name is Jessica, I reminded him gently. I'm a 30-year-old office worker dating a man named Robert. We're starting to get serious, and he's eager to meet my parents. But there's a weight of guilt pressing on me. Both my parents have passed away, having divorced years ago amidst irreconcilable differences. I was just 16 then. After the divorce, I lived with my father, who cared for me deeply. He supported my piano lessons and studies, and I took on household chores in return. Cooking dinner, making rice balls, anything to see his smile of approval. Then came college, where I excelled, much to my father's pride. He encouraged me to visit my mother, who lived with my younger brother James. Big sister Jessica, long time no see. We shared brief moments of joy during those visits. But after my mother remarried, things changed. My husband-to-be wanted me to focus on our life together, which strained my relationship with my previous family. Though I wished them happiness, conflicting emotions swirled within me as I navigated this new chapter of my life. But I don't want to lose the opportunity to see my brother. Can't we just reduce the frequency of our meetings? I'm sorry, but James is entering adolescence and I don't want to confuse him too much. I see, but once we get used to our new life, I'm sure my husband will let us meet. Yeah, I understand. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I didn't want to protest and risk damaging my mother and brother's relationship with their new family. So, I decided to endure it. Years passed. I finished college and landed a job. Yet during that time, I couldn't see my brother or mother. 4 years had gone by, and I couldn't help but wonder why they couldn't spare even a moment to meet me. Perhaps they were leading such fulfilling lives that they no longer needed me. My brother, who was just 11 when we last met, was now 15. I wanted to offer him some encouragement as he prepared for private high school entrance exams. With that thought in mind, I mustered the courage to call my mother. To my surprise, an unfamiliar man answered the phone. Hello, who is this? Isn't this my mother's number? Are you Jessica by any chance? Yes, I am. I'm David, the man who remarried your mother. She's busy right now, so I answered the phone. Oh, I see. Well, it's been 4 years since I last saw them, and I was thinking I'd like to see my brother and mother soon. Really? You haven't seen them? No, I haven't seen them at all. I see. Maybe your mother doesn't want to see you. What? Actually, when I mentioned your name just now, my wife didn't react at all. Is James not around? I at least want my brother to respond to my call. I was thinking that, but James is right next to me. He's just playing a game and not reacting at all. It seems like they've both forgotten about you and adapted to their current lives. They're both living happily, so could you please leave them alone? I'm gonna hang up now, David stated before ending the call. I was left so stunned that I couldn't move for a while after the conversation ended. The thought that my brother and mother might have forgotten about me and were living their lives without me was too much to bear. Seeking solace, I turned to my father for advice. That's strange, those two love you, Jessica, he reassured me. He tried to reach out to my mother, but her response was firm. Please don't call again. In the end, we couldn't meet or even speak to my mother and brother. Life carried on, and I became increasingly occupied with work. Still, they lingered in the back of my mind. Then, about 3 years after that distressing phone call, I received devastating news. What? Mom? It was a notification informing me that my mother had died in a traffic accident. Rushing to the hospital, I was led to the room where her lifeless body lay. Her peaceful expression made it seem as if she were merely sleeping with her eyes closed. I never imagined I'd see her again like this. Sis, a voice broke through my mourning. James. As I grieved my mother's passing, my brother entered the room. It had been 7 long years since I last saw him, and he had grown into a completely different person. Why didn't you come to see us? He questioned, his tone filled with hurt. Did you start hating me and Mom? Wait a minute, I interjected. It was your stepfather, David, who told me not to see you. Dad would never say something like that, James rebutted firmly. Dad's an amazing person, and I look up to him. He wouldn't say something like not meeting with you, sis. What? My brother's trust in our stepfather, David, was evident. They must have developed a strong bond over the past 7 years. Then, a man who seemed to be David arrived. Hi, it's our first time meeting in person, isn't it? He greeted. Hello. David appeared to be in his early 50s with a determined air about him, as if he could accomplish anything. Despite encountering various company employees in my line of work, he struck me as somewhat cunning. I'm really shocked that my wife passed away so suddenly. The funeral will be held soon, so I'd like both you and your father to attend, Jessica, David informed me. Understood. Though my mind was preoccupied, attending my mother's funeral took precedence. My father and I went together to bid her farewell. The funeral proceeded without incident, but a dispute over the inheritance soon arose. Jessica hasn't seen my wife in 7 years, so could you please give up the inheritance? David proposed. What? Wait a minute, I interjected. Wasn't it David who didn't let me see her? Sis, are you still saying that? How many times do I have to explain that Dad would never do that? James countered. No matter how desperately I pleaded, my brother wouldn't believe me. Oh dear, it seems I've become the villain here, David remarked. Dad's not wrong. Sis is just saying weird things, James asserted. Sis, I don't really understand inheritance, but will you give it up? He pressed. What? I should at least receive the minimum inheritance, right? What would Mom think if she saw you being so greedy about money? I retorted, feeling as though David treated me as if I were money-grubbing. At this point, my father intervened. Wait a minute, my daughter is only claiming her rightful share. Stop making such accusations. Thanks to my father's words, David fell silent. No matter what you say, I'll make sure my daughter gets at least the minimum inheritance. What's this? Are you and Sis conspiring to make things difficult for us? David challenged. That's not the case. This is just a claim of rights, my father clarified. The discussion grew heated, and in the end, I received only the minimum inheritance, but it created a divide between my brother and me. My antagonistic relationship with David, my brother's trusted stepfather, caused this rupture. Finally reconnecting with my brother after so long, only to be met with his disdain, compounded the sadness of losing my mother. As if that weren't enough, more misfortune followed. My father was diagnosed with cancer, given only 1 more year to live. It felt like an onslaught of crushing blows, leaving me asking, why is this happening to me? I spiraled into negativity. But my father, noticing my change, gently spoke to me. Jessica, everyone dies someday. It's not something we can control. I've been happy living with you all this time, and I intend to enjoy the time I have left to the fullest. Dad, in the time that remained, we went on trips and did everything he wanted to do. When he passed away, I was left with an unbearable pain from losing both of my beloved parents. Yet my father's last words echoed in my mind. Look forward and enjoy every moment of life. With his words as my guide, I wiped away my tears and chose to move forward. At my father's funeral, my brother arrived, accompanied by David. This presence fueled my brother's aggression towards me, his focus solely on my father's inheritance. Sis, you forcibly took part of Mom's inheritance, so I'm definitely taking Dad's inheritance, he asserted. I didn't want to engage in further conflict or hostility, so I quietly agreed. Yes, of course, I was planning to give it to you anyway. I responded calmly, making arrangements for the inheritance to be transferred to my brother. Since then, I haven't seen or heard from my brother. It felt awkward reaching out to him, and years passed by. Eventually, I met Robert through a friend's introduction. As our relationship progressed towards marriage, I decided to disclose everything to him about the loss of both my parents and the strained relationship with my only sibling, my brother. Despite knowing all this, Robert still wanted to marry me, and I found myself falling in love with him. As our courtship continued smoothly and we received a marriage proposal, I felt like I was on top of the world. But then, in a sudden twist, I received a call from my brother. Hello, James. I greeted, surprised and elated to hear from him after so long. What's up? Oh, speaking of which, I have something to tell you too. However, before I could say anything, my brother interrupted me with an accusation that left me bewildered. Sis, why didn't you come to Mom's funeral? I never thought you were such a terrible person, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. What? I don't think my sister was such a terrible person, I responded, utterly confused by his sudden accusation over the phone. What's going on? Why are you saying something so nonsensical all of a sudden? Nonsensical? Mom's dead, you know? He retorted, his voice filled with anguish. Wait, James, calm down, I urged, struggling to make sense of the situation. How can I calm down? Was this some kind of cruel joke? He questioned, his voice breaking. No, it was too harsh for that, I realized, feeling the weight of the truth in my brother's sobbing voice. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before addressing my brother James. James, Mom died 5 years ago. I began slowly, expecting him to understand. But his response shocked me to the core. What are you talking about? Mom didn't die back then. What? What are you saying? You saw Mom's body too, didn't you? We even had the funeral, I countered, confusion clouding my thoughts. His insistence only added to my bewilderment. No, Mom was alive. I lived with her for about 3 years after that. What? What do you mean? James's voice trembled with disbelief. So, I was living with Mom, I tried to explain, struggling to grasp the situation myself. It's best to go along with the story at times like this, I reasoned, trying to make sense of the apparent disconnect. Yes, but they said she would die soon without an offering. I gave all the money I earned as an offering, James confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Suddenly, it dawned on me that my brother had been deceived. What? At that moment, I realized that my brother had been deceived. But the offering wasn't enough, and Mom died. James, can you introduce me to the person you've been making offerings to? I asked urgently, wanting to understand the full extent of the deception. Of course, you should be saved too, sis, he responded earnestly, leading me to the person who had supposedly rescued Mom. Later, as we entered the office building where counseling was conducted, I felt a sense of unease. Teacher, my brother called out as we stepped into the private office. And there, to my astonishment, was David. Wait a minute, you're the one who remarried my mother and became James's stepfather, right? Why is James calling you teacher? I demanded, my confusion growing. James and I have a patient-teacher relationship, David explained calmly, though his presence only fueled my suspicion. What? No, you live with James, right? James even called you Dad, I protested, struggling to comprehend the situation. Sis, what are you talking about? David is a counselor. Dad died 3 years ago, remember? James interjected, his voice tinged with concern. Wait, David, are you brainwashing James? I accused, unable to shake off the feeling of dread creeping over me. What are you talking about? I've just been listening to him. Before that, I was counseling his mother, David clarified, though his explanation did little to alleviate my growing unease. What? You deceived my mother too? I accused, feeling a surge of anger and betrayal. Sis, don't say such terrible things like deceived, James pleaded, his expression torn between confusion and distress. Jessica seems quite confused. Well, it's understandable. Losing both parents can often lead to mental illness. David interjected, his tone patronizing. What are you talking about? You've unconsciously put a stopper in your mind to avoid facing reality. You're suppressing the grief of losing your parents, he concluded, his words sending a chill down my spine. I can help you release it. Stop it. I'm already looking forward and living my life. Really? Aren't you just enduring it? I'm not enduring anything. It's better not to force yourself. If you do as I say, your heart will feel much lighter. Really? Really? James became cheerful that way too, so why not entrust yourself to me? Yes, please. Good girl. Now, sit here and think about your mom and dad. When I place my hands on your head, the sad feelings will magically disappear. How about it? Do you feel lighter? No, I don't feel any lighter. I see. Maybe it's because the offering is 0, so there is not enough power. What? If you really want to get better, you have to make a lot of offerings. Is that so? Yeah, so let's start with an offering of $1,000. $1,000? That's still not enough to be completely healed. You need to make more and more offerings. Is that so? James made offerings too, right? Yes, he's been making offerings ever since he graduated from high school and started working. That's how he was able to find his mother and regain happy days. But the offerings stopped at one point, and his mother really died this time. So, he's reflecting on that and increasing his offerings to be saved. I see. I called out towards the entrance. That's how it is, Robert. As I said that, the door to the room opened, and my fiancé, Robert, walked in. Who exactly are you? David asked, with a suspicious look at Robert, who then handed David his business card. I'm a lawyer. I've been listening to your conversation, and it seems you've been brainwashing James and swindling a large sum of money from him. A lawyer? He's also my fiancé, and we're going to sue you and recover the money. As I said that, David momentarily looked flustered, but then snorted and retorted, I thought you'd say something like that. James was saved by me. There's no fact that I deceived him. I was just providing legitimate counseling, right, James? David asked my brother with a triumphant look on his face. My brother glanced at us and then said, I was deceived by you and forced to contribute a large sum of money. You, James. David's eyes widened at my brother's statement. It seems your brother intends to sue you. Wait, this must be some mistake, right, James? I saved you. Are you going to betray me like this? Teacher, I do think that thanks to you, both my mother and I felt relieved many times. But it's also true that you were gradually brainwashing us, right? In fact, I became unable to make sound judgments because of you. You brought a woman who looked like my mother and made me believe that she was actually alive. And then, you instilled fear that she would die if I didn't make offerings. Moreover, you disposed of all the photos of my mother and me without my noticing and replaced them with composite photos of a fake mother. The pictures were so sophisticated and natural that I naturally believed the fake mother was my real mother. And before I knew it, almost all of my salary from the years since I graduated from high school and started working was taken by you. When I met my sister and saw the real photos of my mother, the brainwashing suddenly broke. That's when I decided to sue you, capturing evidence if you actually demanding an exorbitant amount of money. You betrayed me," David exclaimed, stunned by my brother's revelation. "Don't mess with me. You're the one who kept swindling money from me and my mother. You brainwashed us, telling us not to meet my sister and even made us lie that you were our stepfather. My mother died without seeing my sister for years. I'll not only get back the money you took from me but also the money you took from my mother. You've sucked money from us and enjoyed yourself. Now suffer misfortune." My brother angrily confronted David with such intensity that David stumbled back in surprise. "Then we'll see you in court," Robert said, and we left the scene. After that, James sued David under Robert's legal representation. David was ordered to pay back the total amount of $300,000 that he had swindled from my brother and mother. Not only was David ordered to pay compensation, but his outrageous fraudulence became known to his previous patients and their families, and he seems to be in serious trouble due to lawsuits and compensation claims from many people. He had been doing as he pleased for so long that he deserved to be punished. I realized that our relationship had been strained because of the brainwashing, and with everything resolved, the resentment between my brother and me disappeared. My brother also attended my wedding with Robert. I hadn't seen my brother for many years because of David, but now I want to fill that gap by regularly meeting and getting along well with my only sibling.